Nikola Tesla.
Induction at Pittsburgh 1889. To fathom the depth of hostility that existed within the Westinghouse camp against Tesla, one need only read Lewis B. Stilwell's chapter on the history of alternating current, written 40 years after the fact in a text entitled George Westinghouse Commemoration.
Edited by Charles Scott, the book was widely distributed by the corporation and reissued in 1985.
In the introduction to Stilwell's chapter it is recounted how Westinghouse brought the Collard-Gibbs system to America, how it was modified, and then given practical demonstrations by Stanley, and what has happened since. In 1888 came Schallenberger's brilliant invention of the induction meter. In the same year, Nikola Tesla was granted his United States patents covering the polyphase motor and system.
Westinghouse promptly secured the American rights. Tesla came to Pittsburgh to develop his motor. He made vain attempts to adapt it to the existing single-phase, 133-cycle circuits. The obvious advantages of direct connection of engines and generators called for a lower frequency.
Two were selected as standard,
namely 60 cycles for general use and 30 cycles for conversion into direct current. If we analyze the structure of this Stilwell quote, we note that although the topic sentence refers to Schallenberger, the entire paragraph is about Tesla.
The word brilliant is used to describe an accidental discovery that a spring reacted to alternating currents when no adjective is used to describe the inventor of an entire power system. Tesla refers to the same situation in his autobiography. My system was based on the use of low-frequency currents, and the Westinghouse experts had adopted 133 cycles with the object of securing advantages in transformation.
Because their Collard-Gibbs system operated at that frequency, they did not want to depart from the standard form of apparatus, and my efforts had to be concentrated upon adapting the motor to their conditions. With 120 power plants set up at 133 cycles per second, one can understand the predicament Tesla was placed in.
Since Schallenberger's meter was compatible with the prevailing 133-cycle single circuit, it appeared logical that Tesla's polyphase motor could be made compatible as well. In December 1888, Edison's propaganda battle against Westinghouse peaked when Edison began to allow H.P. Brown, who was not an Edison employee, to come to his Menlo Park laboratory in order to electrocute various animals with AC.
A few months earlier, Brown had experimented in electrocuting animals at the School of Mines, a division of Columbia University, in New York City.
Brown, an electrical engineer who lived on 54th Street, had become upset over the many accidental deaths of his colleagues. He had collected a list of over 80 casualties, and although many of the men died because of DC, Brown decided that AC was the real culprit. Within 2 years, Brown began to manufacture electric chairs for various prisons, which he sold for $1,600.
He also planned to get paid to be the executioner. During the summer of 1888, the New York Times reported that he tortured and electrocuted a DOG. First trying continuous currents at a force of 300 volts. When the shock came, the dog yelped. At 700 volts, he broke his muzzle and nearly freed himself.
He was tied again.
At 1000, his body contorted in pain.
"We will have less trouble when we try alternating current," Mr. Brown said.
It was proposed that he put the dog out of its misery at once.
This was done on an alternating current of 300 volts, killing the beast.
A number of cities had adopted electrocution to rid the streets of unwanted canines, but the state of New York went a step further and set up a commission in 1886 to report on the most humane method of capital punishment.
Under the auspices of the Medico-Legal Society of New York, Brown arose as chief spokesman.
William Kemmler, a hooligan who had axed his mistress to death, became the test case for the use of electricity as a means of capital punishment.
Ostensibly, because the Westinghouse motors could produce the more deadly frequency, Brown surreptitiously purchased some working models in order to continue his gruesome experiments.
Naturally, Westinghouse was upset over the devastating publicity.
He and Tesla faced the possibility that the new AC polyphase system might never succeed in competition with existing AC and DC technologies, as both former systems required much lower voltages. As Brown prepared to experiment with larger animals in order to assure the commission that electricity could kill criminals in a humane way, the Kemmler trial proceeded to question various electrical experts on the use of the Westinghouse currents for the electric chair.
Edison saw the controversy as a slick way to capitalize on the campaign against Westinghouse and the new Tesla technology. Edison's scheme for electrical execution of criminals is the best so far presented.
He proposes to manacle the wrists with chain connections placed the culprit's hands in a jar of water diluted with caustic potash and connected therein to athers and volts of alternating current. Place the black cap on the condemned, and at a proper time close the circuit. The shock passes through both arms, the heart and the base of the brain, and death is instantaneous and painless. Able to fuel his vendetta, Edison provided access to his famous laboratory for Brown to Westinghouse 20 for dots, which he purchased from the local children at 25 cents apiece.
Edison also Westinghouse to calves and a horse.
Perturbed, George Westinghouse wrote a letter of appeal to the New York Times which stated that AC was no more dangerous than DC, since people have been shocked and injured by DC as well. Westinghouse assured the public of the safety of his system, so Brown, also in the Times, challenged Westinghouse a few days later to meet me in the presence of the competent electrical experts and take through his body the alternating current while I take through mine a continuous current.
The A8 must have not less than 300 alternations per second.
On July 23, 1889, Edison was questioned under oath by Kemmler's attorney, W. Cochran, an Irish immigrant schooled in France, in his second term in the House of Representatives. Having gained a reputation locally for fighting Tammany Hall, Cochran had also achieved national recognition as the boy orator for taking on William Jennings Bryan's presidential opponent, William McKinley, in well-covered debates. Now he set his sights on tackling the Wizard of Menlo Park. Question: has Harold P. Brown any connection with yourself or the Edison Company? Edison: not that I know of. Question: what would happen in case Kemmler should be kept in the chair several minutes with the current working on him? Would he be carbonized? Edison: no, he would be mummified. Question: this is your belief, not from knowledge. Edison: from belief. It never killed anybody. Finally, Mr. Cochran alluded to the rivalry between the Edison and the Westinghouse companies and asked Mr. Edison if he loved Mr. Westinghouse as a brother. There was more than usual stillness, followed by Edison's answer: I think Mr. Westinghouse is a very able man. M.R. Cochran gave the wizard a light from his cigar stump he had been chewing and dismissed him. It would be another full year before the actual execution took place, but public opinion continued to run against the dangerous Westinghouse current. Although Edison did not author the electric chair ideas, he did everything he could to help the cause, providing his staff, especially the ingenious C.E. Kenley, later a professor at Harvard, to aid Brown. In addition, he lent his name.
Outcries began to appear in various periodicals concerning the electrical executioners.
For example, the following editorial was published in a number of the papers and journals: it is hard to conceive of a more horrible experiment than that which will be made on Kemmler. In a secret place, he will be compelled to go through a process of mental and moral, if not also bodily torture, and nobody can tell how long it will last. This ominous passage actually was not severe enough, for the execution of Kemmler became a nightmare. The job was completely bungled when, after electrocution, to the horror of all present, the chest began to heave, foam issued from the mouth, and the man gave every evidence of reviving. The execution was likened to the work of barbarians and torturers and scenes worthy of the darkest chambers of the Inquisition of the 16th century. One eyewitness who was completely disgusted was Dr. Jenkins, who told the New York Times, I would rather see 10 hangings than own such execution as this. Top electricians were also interviewed. I do not care to talk about it, Westinghouse said. It was a brutal affair. They could have done better with an axe. Even Edison was affected. I have merely glanced over an account of Kemmler's death, he said, and it is not pleasant reading. One mistake in my opinion was in leaving everything to the doctors. In the first place, the hair on Kemmler's head was non-conductive. Then the top of the head idea not believe a good place to give a shock.
The better way is to place the hands in a jar of water and to let the current be turned on there.
I think when the next man is placed in the chair to suffer the death penalty, the death will be accomplished instantly and without the scenes at Auburn today. Although Westinghouse tried to distance himself from the nefarious deeds, his company still suffered greater damage than Edison's from a publicity standpoint because it was AC that was used to electrocute Kemmler. Mass hysteria threatened to overpower the attempt to institute the new Tesla AC invention, let alone the prevailing Goddard-Gibbs AC system. Tesla realized that eventually the company would have to come around to the lower frequencies if they wanted to use his creation. But to his shock, in 1890, The induction motor work was abandoned. Westinghouse let it be known that his hands were tied, that his backers would not continue throwing tens of thousands of dollars away on futile research. They had given Tesla a fair chance to alter his equipment to satisfy the needs of the company. It seemed folly to destroy all prevailing equipment to satisfy the untried requirements of this new technology. Furthermore, they were against the idea of paying royalties should the motor eventually prove profitable. Enough was enough. In a quandary, Tesla negotiated with Westinghouse a compromise solution. He would abandon the royalty clause of the contract if Westinghouse promised to commit his workers once again to the invention. Westinghouse was in a corner. He knew that he had to curtail all work on the motor at this time to satisfy the tide of hostility that was rising against Tesla. End of Part 2.
Nikola Tesla.
Induction at Pittsburgh.